come out of this better than you went in, and, I talk about that, and I totally stole it from James Altucher, but that 1% better a day.
Yeah.
I don't care if you come out of this 30-day, 40-day, whatever it is thing, 1% better, but at least come out better for it. Welcome back to the Steady Trade Podcast, everyone. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but, if you're familiar with the past episodes of the podcast, we've often done what we call the listener mailbag. And, again, I think it's been a while. I don't know if we've done one since Kim's been on board. So it might have been, 8-9 months since we've done one. On that note, if you ever have a question or anything you want us to discuss, I think Kim and Steven would probably agree, but some of my favorite episodes are when we're asking specific questions, topics that all of you are looking to learn about. I mean, I think we're roughly 150 episodes in. So at this point, it's always kind of hard to know, have we covered it all, or are there questions that you have? And today we've got 3 topics that I know for a fact we've gotten asked about many a times. Now, we've probably covered them all a little bit, but I think we took kind of like the 3 biggest requests. And so that being said, today the docket is we're going to talk about reverse splits, which is, I often say, it's the modern day pump and dump, as they say. If you haven't been around penny stocks a lot, you might think, everyone always hears about the penny stock pump and dump. Doesn't really traditionally exist anymore. The SEC kind of clamped down on promoted stocks, but what you see is versus a paid promotion from the old days is you see a lot of these stocks do the reverse split. They do the press release to jack their price up so they can, first of all, sell stock, but also a lot of these guys are just trying to stay compliant so they stay on the NASDAQ and they don't get kicked down to the OTCs. Then on that note, we're going to touch a little bit on filings. Stephen and Kim are both here trying to, help educate Kim. And then Stephen and I kind of have a little bit of a differing opinion on, the value and what you should be looking for in SEC filings. And on that note, if you do, we're just going to kind of touch on our opinions, but if you go in the archives, I did a couple episodes with Michael Good. Michael Good is like the SEC filings guru, as they say. So if you want more in depth than what you get today, take advantage of the archive. Check out those 2 episodes with Michael Good. And then we're also going to talk about one of the best patterns out there, one of my favorite setups. It's taken me years to convince Steven. I think one of the reasons he's got, chili stains on his tank top, his hair all messed up.
They're palm trees.
Those are chili. Those are chili stains.
No,
I think it's like ketchup or something. So anyway, we're going to talk about multi-month, multi-week breakouts, etc. So welcome, Kim. Welcome, Steven, even though you didn't clean your shirt. So
hello there. It's nice to be here.
It's good to see you. Even though you're in quarantine.
Just to give some context, I've left my house once in over a month.
It's not that often.
Dubai is locked down.
So, obviously, I think this episode will probably come out relatively quickly. So, for some context, we're recording on April 15th right now. And then Steven, so again, I'm kind of curious, recap it that a little bit. When did you go in lockdown? And you guys are like hard lockdown, right?
Yeah, it's like a $500 fine if you caught outside. We have to
for any reason?
For any reason at all.
Because I saw France, if you have a letter that says what you're doing, they'll let you go, but you can't go outside for any reason. Wow.
Nah, so no, basically what you've got to do is you've got to have a permit from the police. You apply online to say, I want to leave my house for an emergency. So it's emergency groceries, doctors, or undisclosed. And they'll give you a permit within about 3 or 4 hours, but you can't have too many permits. So yeah, so I've been out once when I got the permit. So,
how much food do you have in your house?
Yeah, I just go out and buy loads, and every time I need more. You can order, like, there's still deliveries, like I can get McDonald's and stuff.
Okay. See, that's, and we joked about this a little bit.
I haven't ordered McDonald's.
We joked about this a little bit before the podcast. I mean, it's like, what are the health implications of forcing people to eat takeout food every day?
Not good. It's not good. Plus, it's not good to be stuck inside all the time.
Because, Steven, you're not getting fresh groceries, right? You're probably just ordering takeout, right?
No, I do. I'll order. You can get fresh groceries delivered.
Okay.
So, I mean, I've took it as an opportunity to just eat very well. Like
good.
Fresh meat, fresh fish,
awesome.
lots of vegetables.
Good.
I cook everything myself. I can count calories.
You know how to cook? You know how to cook?
I had basic stuff, meat and vegetables, different variations, and spices, chilies on everything.
That's more than me. I'm impressed.
All you need is a cast iron pan and some butter. You throw that steak in there, baby. That's all you do. You're done.
I just watch Tim Bohen's Instagram and learn from his cook show.
Yep,
like
exactly.
Eggs, bacon, and grease.
Yep. Done.
But but I mean, how much has life changed for you guys? For me, it's changed. But I've just saw opportunity to think, all right, well, I'll take this time to study, and I try to tell other people to do it, but many people won't. I've learned over the years, everyone likes to say that they're going to do studying, but no one ever does. Vast majority of people. Vast majority.
You look at the questions we get, and to the listeners out there that know, I'm actually on Monday morning, I will do my 2000th webinar in StocksToTrade Pro.
Jeez.
But
Steven,
cool. It's amazing. People that are like, I mean, I do all these webinars. And I'll get asked, like, what do you mean when you say green to red? It's like,
yeah.
You've watched hundreds of webinars, so, and you're right. People say, I'm going to study, and they don't. And that's why so many fail, so.
And the even worse thing, and I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to do it on public, but the even worse thing is when people try and sell DVDs and packages and learning experience. And when they do YouTube videos as previews, you can tell that the technical analysis is dog shit. And you're like, you don't know anything. How can you be selling a service? So yeah, I mean, I'm turning into you. I'm the teacher. The student is becoming the teacher because I'm being exposed to all of the terrible things of the trading world, and it beats you down brick by brick. It really does. But then you make money, so you don't mind as much.
So Kim, for you, so the listeners that don't know, Kim is in Hawaii. I mean, how much has changed for you?
Yeah, well, I can't paddle, so that has me really upset. I was looking forward to finally getting back in shape because paddling season, outrigger paddling was supposed to begin about 4 weeks ago, right when they put the quarantine in place. So we're not, we're not even allowed to really go down to the beaches, and that's really sad in Hawaii to not be able to go to the beaches. So, I know I have it a lot better than most. I have a private office where I can come to just get out of my house as long as I'm not around other people. But I think only 15 people are allowed to go into the market at a time, and you can't, you have to have a mask on. So, but nothing's open. I had a little scary encounter actually on Sunday because I came in to do some bookkeeping, and because the little shopping center I'm in is abandoned, some unusual kind of guy was outside my window, and I got really scared, so I had to call the cops. So it was that feeling of being in a desolate, nobody's around kind of experience.
Yeah, it's funny because, and again, whether the listeners know or not, I'm in a very rural area, I've mentioned it on the podcast several times. I mean, my closest neighbor is a mile away, and it's a rental house that I own. Okay. So I'm in the middle of nowhere. But even when I went to get eggs, I get eggs from a little local farm market. I mean, it's 8:30 in the morning, and I'm driving, and it was weird because I didn't pass a single car. Now, again, I'm a rural area. It's not like the 405. But normally 8:30 in the morning on a weekday, you're going to pass 6 cars, something. Zero. And I mean, it was just like, and there was like, it's spring, but it was cold. So there was no birds out, no wildlife. It's like, it felt like like I Am Legend with Will Smith or something.
I'm thinking of Vanilla Sky. Remember that scene where Times Square is like empty, and it's like, I'm in a rural area now too, but it's a creepy feeling to feel and that's why I got scared, because I got, wow, there's nobody for a really far distance. Like, I can't yell anything because nobody's going to hear me. So that part I don't like. I mean, I don't even remember being that kind of like shook up in New York City on the subway at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is a podunk town, like this little country ranch town. And this is just not stuff you have to worry about normally. So yeah.
So back to Steven's point, I tell you, my thing is, and I did I actually did a presentation for Traders for a Cause this weekend, and Traders for a Cause is a great cause. They've had me involved from the beginning 7-8 years ago, and they asked me to open it up. And Steven, that was exactly my opening. I'm like, listen, take this. This is an adverse time. This is a bad situation, but that's, you never accomplish anything great without adversity. So take advantage of this. I mean, if you're stuck at home, you can watch Tiger King 6 times.
Which is
or
so good.
You can watch Tiger King once. You got to watch it once. I'll cut you some
slack. Is it good? I haven't watched it. I'm
you got to watch it.
It's
really so
good.
But you can watch it once, but then you can spend all the other time reading books, learning. Yeah. I mean, the core of my presentation was come out of this better than you went in, and, I talk about that, and I totally stole it from James Altucher. But that 1% better a day. Yeah. I don't care if you come out of this 30-day, 40-day, whatever it is thing, 1% better, but at least come out better for it.
Yep.
Can I say, my brother once gave us advice when I was going through, obviously trading's full of ups and downs, life can be full of ups and downs. And my brother gave us the best advice I've ever heard. And I think it was from a Denzel Washington, Pennsylvania graduation speech.
Wow.
And he said, my brother said to us, whatever you do, whenever you whenever you slip up, don't fall backwards, always fall forwards. No matter what you do, fall forward.
That's beautiful.
And it's stuck with us forever, always fall forward. Whenever you make a mistake, think, what can I learn from this? What can I take? And keep falling forward. And also, if you fall forward, you're falling into the unknown. And when you go into the unknown, that's when you get
magic happen.
The things that you want, right? You're seeking the unknown. You don't want to be in the same circle you've always been in. To fall forward, it's just a better, or for me, it's a more inspiring way of 1%.
Absolutely. It's awesome. They're both good. All right, SEC filings. So Stephen and I did a series on all the things, the primary pieces of what I have to pay attention to. And time frames, we talked about hot sectors, I love that conversation. And we talked about float, and we talked about support and resistance levels, but we never talked about SEC filings. So Tim, we wanted you to tell us, or I want to know. I mean, I know Stephen knows about them, but how much do I want to spend my time looking at SEC filings?
So
hours and hours and hours.
So in my opinion, okay. And this is, this can be, I don't know if you would call it controversial, but I think it's a little bit of a different opinion. First of all, I think you should have a working knowledge of an SEC filing. You should know what an 8K is. You should know what a 10K is. You should know what a 424B is. And these are all things we've talked about in the past. And again, I mentioned in the introduction, Michael Good and I I think they're both episodes breaking down exactly what those are. So I don't really see any point in redoing that when the work has been done, especially coming from Michael Good. I mean, he is the man when it comes to analyzing these penny stock filings. My answer is I do not look at them very frequently, because number one, I know the game. Okay.
Yeah.
When we're talking about junk penny stocks, I know there's a million skeletons in the closet. I know this is not a good company. I know they're going to dilute at some point. Okay. I know that they have no earnings, that they have no sales, that their office is located in a mailboxes, et cetera, et cetera. So what I have seen, and listen, I used to dig into them a lot more in the past when I was learning. And again, you need to have a working knowledge of what these things mean.
Okay.
But in the last few years, I think of one of the best, HEAR, okay? Turtle Beach was one of my favorite from several years ago. And this was, and this is just the first example that comes to mind. So in 2018, basically 2 years ago to the day, like February, March 2018, HEAR gaps up to like $5, and everyone, air quotes everyone, is like, there's warrants, outstanding warrants. And so everyone's like, because they're digging in the SEC filings, and they're like, HEAR, it's a piece of crap. They make headphones. They make like headphones like I'm wearing.
Yeah.
Gaming headphones, right?
Yep.
It's like PlayStation headphones or something. Yeah.
So then over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, basically all summer, like literally 6 months, I think until looks like late August at the chart I'm looking at, this stock was green almost every day. It was green. I'm looking at a weekly chart because it's so far back. It was green every week for 6 months.
Wow.
Because everyone saw the warrants. They thought this thing was going to tank. They get short, and all it does is continue to grind higher. And that is actually, again, when you're talking about a newer trader, trying to focus on these penny stocks, these are great plays on the long side. When you see the volume there, when the stock is closing green every single day, it's one of the best ways to know that shorts are trapped. And you got to be careful holding overnight, but because if they do the offerings, it's typically after hours or in pre-market. But if you get green to reds, I should bring up the daily chart on HER. I'm willing to bet this thing went green to red every day for months because everyone tried to get that first red day. So the stock gaps down, it's red. Everyone's like, here we go. They short, it goes green. And it was literally, Stephen, you remember HEAR, don't you?
Yeah. I remember it being like a 30 or 40 cent stock, if I remember rightly. And it really shot up.
It went to 35.
And it went to 35 in the end. But it broke out, held. And it was like a real company, but it wasn't a real company. So it was really weird because it traded like it was kind of a real company. And when it was in the 30s, even I remember it going down in the 19s, and it stayed in the 19s and 17s for a while. But
this was because the SEC filings, people were reading them and seeing things in them that were misinforming them?
No, I can just explain a little bit. So basically, there's a couple of things. When you go long a stock, so basically, to explain it a bit better, these penny stocks don't really make enough money to survive in the stock market. They don't make enough money to pay their expenses at all. And sometimes the stock drops too low and they don't qualify to be on the NASDAQ anymore. So what they need to do is they need to create new shares, like kind of out of thin air, I guess. So if there's a float of 10 million publicly available traded shares, say for example in a company, and they'll just say, look, we're going to add another 5 million and we're going to sell them for this price because we need money to survive. But what happens is if they do that, the people who originally had 10 million shares, their shares are like kind of worth less now. Yep. And there's a lot of selling pressure because everyone's thinking this company's adding more shares, which is devaluing the share that I've originally got. So I don't want to be in this company anymore. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that when a company dilutes its float, it's a negative sign. So everyone sells. So basically the SEC filings show you when the company, because the company has to give notice to say we're going to add more shares to the float basically. And I don't know if it does it through warrants or if it does it through an at-the-market offering.
They're all, again, I mentioned, I used HEAR with the warrants as an example, but yeah.
So what was happening then with that particular ticker? What was it that you're saying that the SEC filings and people paying attention to them wasn't serving them.
Because basically what happens is, and this is one of the great mistakes that I think a lot of newer traders make, particularly on the short side, is you find this thing. So you find the warrants, you find, you know, the filing for the at the market offering.
What's the warrant mean? What's the warrant mean? I don't know what that word means.
Basically, you get a right to sell shares. Like I could issue warrants and you could buy discounted shares of my company. Okay. So
gotcha.
So it allows you to dilute the stock, raise money. I sell them to you as a discount, then that dilutes the shares, which brings the price down. So,
got it.
But, and again, Michael Good and I talk about it in detail, but what happens is, and Stephen, I think Stephen would wholeheartedly agree with me on this. When you find this little tidbit of information and you're stuck short, so you're now wrong. The chart is telling you you're wrong. The volume is telling you you're wrong. I mean, this stock's hitting the high of the day. It's trading 10 times its normal volume. You now fixate on that little piece of information and you ignore the chart and you ignore the volume. You stay short and then you blow up. You take the huge loss because you're using that little nugget of information to convince you that you're, you know, maybe you'll ultimately be right. Maybe you'll be saved. Maybe you'll get back to break even. I mean, Stephen, you agree with that, right?
No. So I'll just add. So the way, I totally agree. And but the way it works is, say you'll see an SEC filing that says there are 5 million shares that we're going to sell as warrants. So everyone's like, 5 million shares are going to sell. That's going to tank the stock. But for whatever reason, the volume on that day, there's such high demand that the volume's like 25 million.
Yep.
Which means that if there's 25 million shares worth of people want to buy and sell, most of them are long, and there's only 5 million warrants, the warrants just get ate up and they don't really come into play. But everyone's short, thinking that they will, and they don't take into account this excessive volume that's counteracted it.
Yep.
And then everyone stays short. Everyone stays short, thinking it's got to go down. And it doesn't, and then when everyone covers, it explodes because you have to cover to buy.
Yep.
So the best example I can give, Kim, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but to the listeners, you know, Michael Good and I go in depth on this.
Okay.
But the biggest example is and I go in, trigger warning to longtime listeners. I go into this whole supply and demand discussion all the time, but I think so many people underestimate or undervalue the fact that the stock market is a market. At the end of the day, all these indicators, all this information is supply and demand, you know? And so what happens, like Stephen mentioned, if you got a stock that's got 5 million shares in the float, they got outstanding warrants of 5 million. If it's, I mean, we see these penny stocks trade 100 million shares in a day. Okay. Works, WORX traded. It was like a 3 million float stock. It traded 90 million shares on Monday, 2 days ago.
Like 99 or something. No,
yeah, almost 100.
I was just looking at it today, actually.
So think about, put your supply and put your Adam Smith hat on. Okay. The invisible hand, you know, it doesn't matter if they're dumping 5 million shares on the market, if there's 100 million shares changing hands. And that's why, just like Steven said, people stay short. Then the stock starts breaking high day. Everyone panics at high day. You start getting market buy orders by these shorts. And then next thing you know, I mean, you've got a Works. Works went up 700% on the day.
All right. So could the metaphor be that you want, so the metaphor I'm thinking of is a really handsome guy who all the signals are there that he is a player, but he just looks so good in that suit that you just don't look at all those red flags.
He's Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Yes. Well
okay,
said.
An SEC filing could be a handsome man in a suit, but if you're not paying attention to all the red flags, then it could take you down.
Yep.
Well said. Yep. Okay, but there's only one flag and it's small, so it's a bit of a weird one.
What do you mean?
The SEC filing is a small flag, It's a small flag, but people put too much weight on it. It's one small indicator, but people put too much weight on it. That's what I wanted to clarify.
And thank you, Stephen. I think that if there was, obviously I get a little wordy. If there was one way to summarize my whole point, Stephen just said it. Okay. It's the filings are a small piece of this low float, crazy running, heavily shorted stock. And so many turn that, molehill into a mountain.
Okay.
So,
but most people use the SEC filings for them to think they see the company as illegitimate. So are most shorting after they read an SEC filing?
Yeah, because there's, in penny stock land, you're never going to find anything good in an SEC filing. Yeah. See, and actually good question, Kim. So there's press releases and there's SEC filings. So you will never, and again, this is part of the bias. You'll never find anything good in a penny stock SEC filing because these are legal documents.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So if you don't want to get sanctioned by the SEC or go to jail, you have to put the truth in there. But that also, everyone looks at the filings and they're like, oh, it's another junk company. Well, I mean, we've got LTRPB today that's gone from $20 to $120. It's a terrible company, but you can't put too much weight in it. And all penny stocks, that's one of the reasons I don't pay that much attention. They're all bad. It's all a horror story. So
can I just jump back to you on Works because someone said something to us which kind of irritated us. It made us sad, and I just want to clarify. And it's quarantine, things get to us a little bit easier. But with Works, when Works traded 98 million, 99 million, whatever it was, on that day, someone messaged us saying, "I just missed out on the long on Works," and he was like, and I was like, oh, I nearly made all this money. And I was like, don't worry that you missed out on that. It would have been a rubbish trade anyway. He was like, well, what do you mean? If it's high volume, low float, it's got coronavirus, it's a brilliant trade. And I'm like, it's not, man, because if something's rotated its float that many times and it's up that much, you don't know where you are in it and you don't know what it's going to do. And it's not predictable. So it's not a good trade. Tim, what do you think about that?
Sorry.
You weren't listening, were you?
I wasn't listening because our friend Tim Sykes is blowing me up on Skype.
just one quick thing. All right, so someone messaged
full disclosure.
Now, someone messaged us on Instagram, and he said, "Just took this trade on Works, and I just missed out. It would have been a brilliant trade." I was like, "How's Works a brilliant trade?" He says, "Low float, high volume, coronavirus." He says, "Still not a good trade." He says, "How it went from this to this, and it's got all these bullish indicators." Said because when something rotates its float that many times and it's up that much, you cannot predict what that stock's going to do.
Yeah, agreed. And
one day it'll slam, one day it'll run.
Yeah, and as cool as Works was, as fun as it was, I mean, it halted a bunch too. And I mean, it's I was using it as a high volume example, but it's not easy. I mean, this thing, it dropped $3 a share at the open, spikes $4 a share, and then faded all day. I mean, it was all over the place.
You can't predict that, right? Exactly. I don't think you can predict that. And if you can, you're a 10 times better trader than I'll ever be.
They are tough, especially when they start halting,
All right, so just give me a little clarity. A press release is where they're going to be using marketing words and being a little bit more dressed up, like what lipstick on the pig, you've used that term before, right? Yep. But then an SEC filing is going to be more with them being very careful of their language because of the ramifications of that document. Yep.
But press release is a press release. It's just like it's you're not going to say anything bad in your press release. You're going to be like, hey, the Steady Trade podcast is amazing. We have new hosts, et cetera. We're not going to tell you about the times that Stephen shows up drunk. Only 3 or 4 times. We're not going to tell you about that. But, you put the positive in the press release.
All right. So our both
You're not going to talk about the time I interrupt too much. The best part of the Steady Trade podcast is Tim interrupting everybody 500 times an episode. You don't put that in the press release. So.
All right. So both of these, if I'm is there a particular indicator? Is an SEC filing and or a press release indicating to me that this company is perhaps desperate?
Yeah, they will. They will. A press release will indicate that you are desperate. Because if you are constantly pushing out news that has no real substance, and it sounds almost to the point where it's ridiculous, you can see that they're desperate to get the price up.
Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to short, even though ultimately they might go down. They may not go down quick enough for you to be able to make a profit off there.
It's just one indicator of 9 indicators, and you use all 9 together to figure out the strength. And like I said, you've got to run it. The best way I can ever explain it is what's that movie where that English guy creates the German thing that stops the war? The imitation game or something like that. Can't remember. But there's a.
Was this a British movie?
Yeah.
I'm not watching that crap.
But anyway, imagine the best way I can explain trading is you've got 10 indicators and 9 indicators, right?
Yeah.
And they're all like wheels that are rolling around all at the same time, saying what's the value of this, what's the importance of this, what's the weight of this, what's the weight of this. They're all rolling all at the same time as you see the stock moving. Yeah. And when you get better at trading, it's when you start learning how to multitask on all 9 of the wheels.
Yeah. Well, doesn't Tim Sykes have the indicators, right? And does he have
Sykes sliding scale?
The sliding scale. What's the number he gives to SEC filings? Does he give one for that? I'm trying to look at my notes.
Probably a 0. He doesn't cover them in it.
He doesn't. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Just check.
I remember that he puts about 20 points. It's 100, right? So he puts 20 points to the press release. Mm-hmm. He puts 20 points to the long-term chart. I think he probably puts around 20 points to floating volume-ish, and then the rest get like 10 or something like that.
I think a press release gets 20 points now that I think about it. I don't know if that's even in there.
Press release starts the action. The press release is the beginning of the action most of the time.
Really?
Okay. And another good thing to remember the difference between press release and SEC filings is press release is the company's opinion or their interpretation of facts, where SEC filings is literally the facts.
Yep. All right, that's what I have here. He has pattern and price 1 to 20, risk reward 1 to 20, ease of entry 1 to 10, past performance 1 to 10. Do you have the schedule, the ability to stay with it 1 to 20? Reason or catalyst is what he calls that 1 to 10, and then market environment 1 to 6.
Yeah, so, that DVD is the most underrated DVD of all the DVDs he's ever done.
I think
it's probably the best one, and he gave it for free. And then
it's funny you say that, because it just, like something I talk about all the time is, these worksheets. I think one of the, that I use in StocksToTrade Pro, I think one of the great things about Trader Checklist is, I'm not saying it's the perfect system, but it is a system. And I think that is one of the biggest things newer traders lack, is they they don't have a system. And I'm not saying my worksheet's perfect, I'm not saying Trader Checklist is perfect, but at least it is a system. It is parameters, and it reminds you to check these things too. I think that's a lot of what new traders miss, is they just they overlook a lot of this stuff. Just the reason catalyst. Sorry. The reason catalyst might be an SEC filing, might be a press release, but just because that shows up, and even if it doesn't, it makes you go, okay, this is a flag. You want to keep that in mind along with everything else, is what I'm hearing you guys say. Okay.
Yeah, and the most important, and it brings me on to the point that I was going to make, the best thing that Tim Bohen has ever taught me, ever, in the years and years and years of doing this podcast, is to build the case. It's the best thing I've ever been taught. And I learned it in StocksToTrade Pro, because he said it relentlessly every day.
I never repeat myself.
But building the case is almost the perfect system. You saying, the worksheet's not the perfect system, and Sykes sliding scale's not the perfect system. I would say building the case is the perfect system, because it's dead simple. You're like, how many factors are bullish? How many factors are bearish? It's mixed. There's mixed, some bullish, some like APDM or whatever it was today. What was that stock that you were looking at? I was looking at it as well.
APDN was the morning low float runner that it ultimately failed, but yeah, yep.
Do you know what I thought? I thought terrible chart, bearish. Building the case, terrible chart, bearish. It's actually a real company that's got cash and makes money, bullish. It's a low float, high volume, bullish. It's holding its trend together, bullish. But that chart's pretty terrible and it's failed every time it's spiked, bearish.
Yep.
And I was like, that's 3 bulls and 2 bears. That's a direct conflict in the number of indicators I'm weighing. I'm not trading it.
Yeah, and if you're on YouTube, this is something that I teach in StocksToTrade Pro, and maybe you've seen it on just like Steven's doing. It's the caveman method, but just like Steven, I'll do that. I'll tick off, and if it's like 3 negatives and 5 positives, okay, maybe it's a trade. If it's 5 negatives and 1 positive, yep. So
right, so this is the way I've learned to do it from you, and I've interpreted. So if it's like 7 positives and 1 negative, I'm gonna give myself room on the risk reward. I'll give myself a good risk reward and I'll take some good size. If it's like 5 bullish, 2 bearish, or say 5 bearish and 2 bullish and it's a short, I'm like, oh, this could go wrong. I'm only gonna get in with the best, tightest risk reward. Only if it hits these targets am I getting in.
Beautiful.
Because it's got the potential to go wrong. So I'll manage my risk reward based on what the case looks like.
Makes sense.
And it's served us so well.
Awesome. All right, reverse splits, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need to move on. That was
teach me.
Sorry,
teach
me.
Well, no, and keep in mind, great
so
discussion,
important.
great job, guys.
Okay.
I love it. It's just this is gonna be a Joe Rogan 3-hour episode if we don't move on.
Let's do reverse splits in 10 minutes. It's like a challenge.
Yep, there you go. Yep.
You know reverse splits better than anyone, Tim. You're gonna say it.
Well. So what I'm gonna give my perspective, and then I know some of the things that trip up people a lot. I mean, I think the biggest. So really quick, what is a reverse split? Let me just cover it super quick.
Yeah.
Investopedia is a great resource. It's free. You can look up what a reverse split is. But remember, most stocks, most penny stocks are failing stocks. The chart's I'm doing the hand, lower or upper left to lower right. They're going to be constantly downtrending. They're going to be constantly going down. And if it's a NASDAQ stock, you have to stay above $1. So they're going to do a reverse split to get their stock price back up. They also know when you're a long-term downtrending stock, people don't like 10-cent stocks. People prefer $5, $6, $7 stocks. I mean, like CNBC won't even mention, stocks under a couple bucks or whatever.
Yeah.
So what these stocks do, back to that supply and demand, is they reduce the number of shares to get the stock price up, to maintain their listing requirements and make them more attractive to people. Okay.
Yep.
So the best way to put it is, if you've got 1 million freely tradable shares, well, let me say 10 million. You've got 10 million freely tradable shares and you're trading at $1. Your enterprise value is $10 million. Your worth, your market cap, your enterprise value, I could buy your penny stock if I wrote you a check for 10 million. Mm-hmm. All the reverse split does is reduce the share count. So now you've got if you do a 10-for-1 reverse split, which is very common, your stock is now going to be worth $10, but the float or the freely tradable shares is 1 million shares. So a lot of people get confused because they think, oh, this stock is up huge. No, I can still write a check for $10 million and buy your company. Yeah. There's just bigger pieces of the pie in essence. I just divide it, instead of itty bitty pieces of the pie, I now have $10 pieces of the pie. So what I see a lot is, and see, when these reverse splits happen, it puts it on everybody's radar. We had one today. CYCC is a reverse split. I think we had several today, actually. So when they reverse split, they're up 1,000%, where they're not up 1,000%. It's just it looks like it is. Yeah. So the biggest trip up I see is a lot of people, number one, they try and play guessing games on when these reverse splits happen. I hate that. People will buy the stock in advance of the reverse split, and then hoping that when it does the reverse split, everybody loses their mind and buys it and it runs up. please don't do that, because sometimes they don't do the reverse split for weeks or months or never do it. Now you're sitting in this terrible stock that's going nowhere. It's tying up your buying power. You can't trade other stuff. And then I say, and I know this might be a little controversial, I never touch reverse splits on day one because I can't chart them. You know, when you've got a stock that's gone from 1 to 10, I can't use any of my past values. I can't do anything with this thing. So what I look to do is trade them on day 2 or day 3 if they stabilize on day 1. So I say don't try and play the reverse split guessing game and never trade them day 1. I mean, what's your opinion, Stephen?
No, I'd just give props to Tango Baker, the former StocksToTrade Pro student of yours.
He was 2 years. He's the man. Great guy. Yeah.
Who's gone on to be a full-time professional trader, which is awesome. Tim, I hope I'm like another one of your students eventually. I'm on the right track. But
too bad you're never in the webinars.
Come on,
you show up for like 30 seconds in your chili stained t-shirt.
Yeah, do you know what the thing is? The thing is, I couldn't figure out my password and stuff like that, but I can't be in because I'm not working now. Well, I am working, but I'm working.
Finish what you were saying.
Oh, no, don't stop guilt tripping as you guilt tripping us. No, but I will. I've been in all the challenge stuff in the challenge room, so I'm going to jump back into because I'm on a hyper intensive learning phase right now. But not about me. Tango Baker, the legend that he is. I wish I could meet him. Have I met him? I think I have met him. We met him together, did we?
I gotta believe you've met him in Orlando. He's been to Orlando.
I did meet him. Yeah. We met him together when we did the StocksToTrade lunch thing. I've met him. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, and he figured out a pattern where he just basically monitored every reverse split and found out how and when they ran. And it was his own pattern, and it still kind of works these days, I think. But my opinion on reverse splits is I don't even look at them. I don't even look at them for the exact same reason as you. The float's just reduced, which is too scary because I don't know how it trades on this new float. Everyone's new to it. There's no like, because if you look at a long-term chart, 1, you don't have the levels on a reverse split because it's just changed. But 2, you don't have the float anymore. So you don't know how it's going to react because every stock has a personality. It reacts to certain levels based on a certain float. And that's how it operates. That's its operating system as a stock. But when it reverse splits, it's all new. So and it's exactly the same as the public off the IPOs. I'm like, how the hell
I never traded day 1 IPO. Never.
The same thing. It's the same thing. I'm like, I don't know what to do. But I mean, if you're someone like Nate, by the way, I saw Nate was short and walks. He was short and he banked on it as well. I'm like, how? I'm like, only he will short a stock, go on parabolic all day and make money doing it. But yeah, my opinion is just stay away from them. Or if you're going to do anything, track every single one and look for nuances and patterns. But Tim, you're playing multi-day breakouts on them, right? After a few days. Yeah. That's what I look for. Because the problem with these, so many of them die day 1. So it's just, so what I want to see, and I'm doing the hand gestures if you're on YouTube. I want to see that thing that, it gaps. Well, it's not gapping up, but the reverse split. And then it hangs around all day, hangs around day 2, and then starts perking on day 3. And then I can actually chart this thing and figure out where my stop is. But day 1, it's just a mess to me. Yeah. So. Yep.
All right, that helps. I still think I need to learn a few more things before I'm paying close attention to that. But now I have I at least understand what that term means.
You've completed the course. Congratulations.
No,
you've completed you've completed the beginner's nine elements.
At least
education course.
At least I know what these words are. It's like learning my new vocabulary words. So, all right, what was the third thing we wanted to talk about today? Was there a third one, Tim?
Multi-month breakouts and how Stephen has finally found religion.
Okay,
so, I can take this really quickly. I was watching a lot of I've been watching Tim Bohen do them. I've watched a lot of Tim Bertani webinars since he's been.
So first off, describe the setup. Start there, then go into it. So
to describe the setup, so basically, the setup is when you've got 3 different setups. I'd say a multi-day breakout is when the stock. For me, this is my criteria. If a multi-day breakout is when the stock goes above a level that it hasn't gone over in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. Multi-week is when it goes over a level it hasn't in a week. Multi-month is when it goes over a level on the day that it hasn't in a month. And a multi-year is when it goes over a level that it hasn't gone over in a year. Now, the other criteria that I track personally is for a breakout to work, it has to have significantly higher volume on that breakout day than it has recently on the chart. Because if it's the same volume, it's going to get stuck at the different resistance levels and it's not going to be standout. So that's one thing. Two, the market cap should likely, I know MRN is a different example, but the market cap should be under 50 million because it needs to have agility to be able to go up. Four, it needs to, I don't mind if it's got resistance. It can have as much resistance as it wants, but it can't have volume resistance. Because if it's trading high volume on that day, unprecedented compared to what it trades previously, for me, that wipes the chart clean and resets it as a new chart. So I don't even really look at those levels. I only look at the levels with volume attached to them. Five, it should have a reason that it's up. It should be with news or some sort of catalyst or some sort of hot sector. And ideally, six, it's had a history of running multiple days before, but it doesn't matter if it hasn't. And seven, if that thing's hitting 52-week highs and the chart's been very clean and then it's smashed out onto a new chart, it's going to be wonderful. And eight, just the last thing, I'm not chasing it. I'm buying it. I'm buying it around the breakout level, and I'd like to have a good level below. Quite a wide risk because these breakouts are choppy on Nasdaqs, but I like to have a good risk. I like to have a good risk level. I'm not just giving it 2%, 3%. I want a good, solid volume weighted resistant level that I'll take it off.
I'm drying my tears of joy with my STT Pro breakout worksheet.
It only took 3 years to learn that, and I learned it in a couple of months once I got it. But it took 3 years to click in my head. It took 3 years to click in my head.
They're tears of joy. It's like my son is a senior in high school. I feel like he's walking down the aisle right now. No, I mean, I got nothing else to say because Steven nailed it. I mean, and I know we've brought this point up, but keep in mind, people are always like, oh, I buy breakouts and it doesn't work. You don't buy any breakout. Steven gave you 8 things to look for. That's the breakout you buy.
No, and honestly, I sometimes do the YouTube live streams and I'll get 50, 60 people on, all who are, I don't know how well they know trading or how well they don't. And they're like, oh, this stock, and you must get it all the time as well. Oh, what do you think of this stock? Oh, what do you think of that stock? Oh, this is a breakout. Ah, that's a breakout. And I can tell them, I can probably tell you up to 9 reasons why that's not a breakout. Yep. Or up to 7 reasons why that's not a breakout. And you'll go through 50 tickers and none of them fit any of the criteria. And when it does fit the criteria,
or maybe 1 or 2 criteria, but not 8,
But the other one was that NLS or whatever it was, that company. I took that on a multi-week breakout. That was a brilliant one. That was brilliant. It was the best one because I was like, I don't think I should long. I haven't tracked enough data, and I'm like, I cannot not take this. I cannot not take it.
Yeah, actually, that was a great one. Again, today is April 15th. NLS Nautilus exercise. Go back to that chart on Monday. What I loved about it was multi-month breakout, like Steven said. It was Monday.
Consolidated as well,
Monday is always, everybody's always fired up on Monday. The volume was there. It was a whole $1.50. Don't discount that.
Forgot that one. I forgot that.
It was
like mRNA.
Yep. It was a triple top. Well. It was a triple top at 4, quadruple top, really. It breaks 4 on a Monday on high volume. It's a stay-at-home play. Okay, they make stay-at-home fitness stuff. So you got a story, you got a chart, you got volume, you got a whole $1.50. I mean, I put it on the weekend watch list on Sunday because of all these things, and it went from 4 to 5+, and it's still above 5. I mean, this thing will probably a great swing setup all week. But yeah, well done, Steven. So
I mean, I don't often get turned on by stocks, but I got a little bit turned on by that one. That turns me on. Do you know what I mean? It turns you on. It really does.
Well, again,
turn you on.
Yeah, and I want to be clear to all the listeners. you can check all 8 boxes and the stock could still fail, but you're making, the thing is, you're, especially as a newer trader, if you're under the PDT, you're trying to put as many odds in your favor as you can. And NLS was, you know, again, it checked every single box in my opinion. And like Steven said, it, so Steven talked about the market cap. You know, it's 150 million market cap, but you know, last week it was a $2 stock, so it would have been like a $50 million market cap. And I'll leave on this point. You know, the reason Steve, and I'm glad he made that point. When we talk about the market cap, I always use the Sisyphus analogy. I use this one all the time. If you're familiar with your Greek mythology, Sisyphus was doomed to perpetually push a rock up a hill. And if it's a large market cap stock, it's a huge rock to push up the hill. So the stock may go higher, but it's going to take forever. And if you've got a small account, you're not trying to trade some slow moving stock. NLS was a small enough market cap that, you know, Sisyphus can roll it up the hill. So that's an analogy I use all the time about market caps. Big market cap stocks can still move. I mean, look at Tesla. Tesla moves, but your odds are better when you've got that smaller market cap.
Understood. This is good. This is helpful, guys. It helped a lot. I still have a ways to go, but at least I think I'm seeing the landscape more and more. The lens is slowly coming into focus.
No, I remember when I first started trading, I was writing these blog posts on Profitly, and I could describe it as walking down a black alley and pitch black at night, and you're walking along, and you can't see where you're going, and you're bumping into loads of stuff. But if you walk long enough, you'll start to see glimmers of light at the end of the alley and at the end of the long road. You're walking in the dark in the beginning. It's so easy for experienced traders to be like, oh, haha, this and haha that. And how don't you know this? But everyone forgets how hard it is, man. It takes years to learn.
Your eyes have to adjust to the darkness and your pupils have to dilate. And that's what, you know, every time I talk to you guys, they dilate a little bit more. So thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Steven. And thank you to the listeners out there. You know, I think that, again, this was a fun episode. I think that's, you know, our goal is always, I mean, I know obviously we joke around and make random references, but, you know, I think it's the best way to learn is to enjoy it. I mean, I think hopefully all 3 of our passions show through. I mean, we love doing this, love answering these questions. And again, you know, this is a mailbag episode. Head over to SteadyTrade.com, drop us a comment. We've got a contact button there. If you're watching on YouTube, drop us a comment. We have a whole team. We read all the comments. And, you know, if you have a topic or a question, drop it, you know, somewhere, email us, whatever you want to do. And thank you again for listening. And hopefully you took away some great information from this podcast.